Hello, everyone. My name is Jose Balbuena, and I will be presenting for week 13. The article that I'm presenting on is Community Colleges and the American Social Order by Stephen Brent and Jerome Carabel. For a quick summary of the article looks at how community colleges in the United States have changed over time, especially why they started focusing more on job training. It questions two common ideas that the colleges just give students what they want, or that businesses control what colleges do. The authors argue that these views miss what's happening inside the colleges themselves. Instead, they argue that college leaders made choices based on their position in a system dominated by big universities and businesses. Since community colleges couldn't compete with elite schools or offer high status jobs, they focused on job training to stay relevant and survive. This move toward vocational programs wasn't just about outside pressure, it was a smart way for the colleges to find their place in a system that wasn't built for them. In the end, the article sees vocational training as a practical response to the inequalities built into education and the economy. And to further add, vocationalization refers to the process of making something, particularly education, more focused on specific jobs or careers. In my opinion, the main thesis of the article is that community colleges adopted vocationalization not due to direct demand from students or businesses, but as a strategic response to their structurally subordinate position within higher education and the labor market. Some of the key arguments presented in the article are that community colleges arose to absorb the influx of students post World War II without overloading elite institutions, that they serve as a cooling out function that redirects working class students away from a 4 year degree. And administrators made their own decisions, proactively adjusting their colleges to match what they believed more powerful institutions wanted. Some of the key points presented in the article are that community colleges are structurally subordinate to 4 year institutions and elite professional schools. Business Businesses had indirect influence through structural power, not direct intervention, and vocationalization was a strategic move to secure resources. For context, methods, and evidence, I will be going over each of them briefly. For the context of the article, they examine the role of community colleges in American social order and their historical development, especially post World War II. For the method, the authors use historical institutional analysis, and they also use sociological analysis. For the evidence, the authors provide historical trends, policy documents, enrollment data, and institutional practices. For connections to the course, I chose to go with conflict perspective versus functionalist perspective. With conflict theory perspective, you can view the social world in terms of competing groups struggling over scarce resources. In this case, it would be higher education. Also, using conflict theory, you can examine how people with wealth or power maintain and or impose their wealth or power, and how people without wealth or power work to acquire the wealth or power. Furthermore, using conflict theory, you can see the struggle for advancement in education, wealth, power, prestige, and upward mobility. With a functionalist perspective, you can argue that inequality and stratification are neutral, are natural and necessary for functioning of society. Therefore, it implies that community colleges are doing a good thing by sending students into the workforce rather than a four-year institution. And also using a functionalist perspective, you can argue that since community college and vocational programs are more affordable, they can be easier to access and used for upward mobility. For my personal reflection, I wrote what resonated with me is the way community colleges often seem caught between aspiration and limitations. The article made me reconsider how accessible community colleges really are. While they provide opportunities, many students still face systemic barriers that limit upward mobility. I personally attended community college and always assumed that they were preparing you for higher education. I was surprised to learn about their subordinate position in the current educational landscape. It's quite interesting and fascinating that community colleges can both challenge and reinforce social inequalities. With the rising cost of colleges and push for vocational training, the tension between access and inequality is more visible than ever. For my discussion questions, I have my first one is, why is vocational education still so strongly associated with community colleges? And what does that say about how we view different types of institutions and the students who attend them? For my second question, I have, in what ways might subordination still shape education policy today? I hope these are good questions and uh, provide some thought-provoking answers. And lastly, these are my references. I used the article itself as well as some of the information in the course modules.